on AM 560. The Answer.
All right, we've solved the Governor Cuomo nipple mystery. Some reporter who did not want to cover this story said, believe me, there are far more important things happening in the world and far more pleasant topics I'd rather be talking about. But almost a week after Reddit users first suggested that New York's governor might have pierced nipples, people are continuing to entertain the idea. And breaking news. This is from the other day. So, and if you're watching at home, you can see a little picture here. So this looks like it's nipple tape that is covering, because that happens a lot with when guys wear white shirts. You know, you could see through the white shirt. You don't wear white shirts?
I put a T-shirt underneath it,
Okay, well, if you're not, because look at, because he's got to show off his sexy chest there.
Yeah, I see.
You know, because it's all about him. I like the ladies, you know. He's on the prowl, man.
Oh,
so then
Lord.
he puts tape over the nipples. Oh, see, that's just weird to me. But I guess, is that a guy thing? Do you guys normally do this?
No.
No, you just wear two shirts?
I do. I have a T-shirt on here, a V-neck T-shirt,
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
all right, all of a sudden this
tape?
got uncomfortable, and I'm going to not talk about this anymore.
Gosh.
Well, I'll save this for Dan Proft when he's
he
back
would love
on
it.
Monday.
He would
because
love that.
He calls him Nipples Gambino.
He would love that.
The Derek Chauvin case going on, and we all know that if it doesn't go the way that BLM wants, that they're going to burn it all down.
Yeah, I agree.
We've had activists here in Chicago say that, and of course in Minneapolis and all over the country in large metropolitan areas, that if he's not found guilty of first or second degree murder, then everything's going to be burnt down to the ground again.
But think about that. They're saying that, but then when they are convicted, they feel like the system is unjust. So they basically want to perpetuate a justice system that's not fair to him, but they claim that it's unfair to them. Does it make sense? We're really living in a bizarro world today.
Oh, yes, we are. And with more on this, let's welcome back our very good friend, Ed Morrissey. He's senior editor for hotair.com. Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, John.
Hey, buddy.
Do you want to talk about the governor's nipple patches?
I guess I'm just too old to understand the appeal of that, but, if that's the it's certainly not the worst thing that Cuomo's done. So, by this point, it's almost a resume builder, I would say.
I mean, talk about somebody who's so full of themselves.
Yeah.
It just can't get any worse. And he thinks he's above the law and he's God. And, he's selling himself to women in his office because he's single and he wants to mingle. And it's so creepy because he's dating. Some of the girls he's been hitting on are the ages of his daughters. Wow. He has 3 daughters, and that would not sit well in our family. Anywho, okay, let's move on to what's going on in Minnesota, where you are the Derek Chauvin trial, because I'm with John Anthony's filling in today for Dan Proft. And you have a theory on this. He's a former cop, and you know Ed.
Yeah.
But tell him what your theory is.
Well, I don't see how they will be able to prove the intent that Officer Chauvin basically intended to kill him, because I think this defense attorney is doing a masterful job of really sowing doubt into the juror pool, because first of all, he's funny, he's soft spoken, and he's doing a real job, and he's putting the training. My buddy Mike Brown, he says he's putting the training of the Minnesota Police Department, and I think police departments all over the country, because training is it's not adequate enough for what the police officers do on an in and out basis. I don't know what your thoughts about that, Ed.
Well, John, great talking with you again. We've known each other for a while, so it's great talking with you and Amy. I haven't been watching the trial. I've been watching some of the analysis from Andy McCarthy over at National Review, and my really good friend Scott Johnson at Powerline has been doing some great work over there. They're not quite as sanguine about the defense attorneys in this case. And what I would say is that I think you're right about the intent part, but that's really only applies to the second-degree murder charge. The third-degree murder charge doesn't really require an intent to kill, just depraved indifference. Now, it's called something slightly different in Minnesota statute, but it's basically the depraved indifference concept. And I'm not necessarily sure that they're not going to get to that point. And I always thought that the second-degree murder charge was a reach anyway.
Yeah. Yes.
But third degree might be in range. And look, I mean, I think that there was a lot of testimony from Medaria Arredondo and some of the other police officers who got on stand and said, that's not what we taught, and that wasn't necessary. And as soon as he was on the ground and restrained, that there shouldn't have been any neck pressure at that point.
But I also think as you well know, all you have to do is sow doubt into the juror pool, and I think that photo of showing where the EMT came in and was able to reach the cardiac artery, and and then he introduced to show where the knee, that it wasn't on his neck, it was on his shoulder blade. These are things that sow doubt into a juror pool, and I think this is why it may even be, because the second degree carries the longer term. The third, I think, is anywhere from 4 to 10 years. I agree with you. I've always thought it should have been manslaughter, a manslaughter charge, period, anyway. But I think these, again, I think because of that doubt that can be sowed, that this Chauvin and the other three should be get off just general purposes, because they didn't really do anything.
No, and that one of them was a novice police officer, and he was just
a month out, right?
Right, or even less than that, I think. But he was just following the lead of his boss, who was out on the scene, looking for some guidance. But I always think that this trial has been, or this case has been tried in the court of public opinion.
Yes.
And that there's too much on the line. If I was a juror, first of all, I would never want to be a juror in this case.
Yeah.
No.
Because there is just, would you, Ed? Would you ever want to be a juror?
No. In fact, I'd written quite a bit about it. So, even if I was part of the jury pool, I was reasonably convinced that nobody in their right mind on either side of that courtroom would seat me on the jury. But, for a while they were talking about moving it to a different venue, and I live in an adjacent county to Hennepin. I was really hoping that they weren't going to move it into my county. I really didn't need that, and I didn't need the potential of being in the jury pool. But I think John's making some good points about reasonable doubt. It only takes one to hang a jury, but I think that from what I'm seeing anyway, and again, with the limited amount of stuff that I'm seeing, I'm watching Scott and Andy's analyses. I'm reading the daily reports from the trial from the various media outlets. From what I'm seeing, I think that the reasonable doubt is most likely just going to be aimed at that second-degree murder charge and possibly the third-degree murder charge. But the problem for the prosecution is if they only get a manslaughter conviction against Chauvin, it's going to make their trial against the other three officers really difficult, because they really need a murder conviction in order to sustain the charges against the other three officers. They're going to end up having to charge them with something less, and that, I think, will be politically fraught. In Hennepin County,
is Minnesota preparing for this for the outcome? Have you seen an increase in police presence, boarding up buildings, or anything of that nature?
I haven't seen that, but I will tell you that I think it was Minneapolis. I don't know if St. Paul followed suit, but Minneapolis, they used to have a rule that said you couldn't have outside barriers on windows for businesses. And you see these in like New York City all the time. You could
Chicago
roll down.
too.
So it's fine. But in Minneapolis, it was illegal until just a few weeks ago, and now they're all installing those things. So I think that businesses are preparing themselves for pretty much what's going to happen regardless of what the trial outcome is. I think that no matter what happens, even if he gets convicted on second-degree murder, you're going to have some problems out in the streets just because of the celebratory factor there too. So.
Well, did Minneapolis ever recover from the riots in the summer? I went by Kenosha. I was up that way for a basketball game, and I drove downtown Kenosha. Everything is still completely boarded up.
Really?
Oh yeah, and artists, street artists, they came in, put on whatever social message they want and painted with graffiti. It's nice, but they're not reopening anytime soon. The stores are open, but that is such a horrible look. Yeah. It seems so oppressive.
Yeah.
And so third world country-ish. Is Minnesota gotten back up?
Not fully, no. There was a lot of damage. It was much worse than Kenosha, and the Minneapolis City Council didn't waive some zoning and construction regulations that would have expedited the reconstruction. So there was some sense that they were trying to preserve these destruction sites as some sort of monument. It was just crazy around here, even in the post-riot atmosphere. Now, some of that has changed, and they're starting to make some progress, but it's going to take years before they even just physically rebuild, and I don't know that they're ever going to get the same level of commercial engagement that they did in Minneapolis for a couple of reasons. One is the pandemic. I think a lot of businesses now are convinced that, urban, commercial real estate is passé, when you can send most of your workforce home and still get the job done. Yep. So I think that there's going to be commercial real estate problems in Minneapolis and other cities, but especially Minneapolis. There's going to be, and that's going to lead to problems for retail businesses down there that relied on that commercial real estate business. It's going to be a cycle of downturn here, I think.
Yeah, and how are the COVID numbers, speaking of COVID, up in Minneapolis and in Minnesota in general?
That's a good question, because they were ticking up. We were getting more positivity. We've got about 5% positivity in the state testing, and that has led to an increase in hospitalizations here. So we're kind of going through. It's not Michigan. Michigan's got a real big
Michigan,
problem.
I don't know what is going on in Michigan. That's bad.
Nobody's really quite sure what's going on in Michigan, but our vaccination numbers are pretty much in line with the national trend. But our cases are going up again, and I think it's because the weather hasn't consistently warmed up here, so people are socializing, but they're socializing indoors. Whereas in warm weather states like Texas, Florida, and that sort of thing, what you're seeing is people socializing outdoors, where transmission is almost non-existent. Yeah. And that's the reason why their numbers are trending downward. And here in the upper part of the United States, the numbers are trending upward.
So, Ed, what's going on with the vaccine passport? What are your thoughts about it? Are there any security measures that I look at it from a security aspect, which I do most things, of what they can onboard to a lot of these type of things. Because I think right now is paper. I think the next phase is digital. What are your thoughts about having this vaccine passport?
I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, first off, I don't know if you saw the thing with the I think it was the Yankees game where they tested one out. The New York Times tested one out, and it was buggy. It didn't work. People weren't able to get in, even though they'd been vaccinated. It's a terrible idea because it's even on paper it's a bad idea, but in practice it's even worse. And what you're going to wind up doing is generating something that we've never really had in the United States, which is an internal travel passport. I mean, it's the type of thing that the Soviet Union used to have. And I think that it's a dangerous way to go. I think there's certain things that you can sort of mandate when it comes to, you can't even mandate, but what you can say is